Have you ever heard of a microscopic fungus that holds a truly bizarre and powerful secret? I mean, on the one hand, it's this devastating plague that can just wipe out an entire harvest, a total nightmare for a winemaker. But on the other, it's considered a divine blessing, the absolute key ingredient in some of the world's most legendary and, yeah, most expensive wines. So, how can one single organism be both a feared destroyer and a revered creator? That's the fascinating paradox we're going to unravel today. We're diving deep into the dual identity of a fungus called Botrytis cinerea. And it's an incredible story about nature's delicate balance, where just the slightest shift in conditions can change, well, absolutely everything. All right, so to really wrap our heads around this Jekyll and Hyde personality, we first need to get to know the fungus itself. How does it live? How does it spread? What's it really after? Well, the first thing to know is that this stuff is practically everywhere. It's a real survivor. It just hangs out during the cold winter months, totally dormant on old leaves and bits of plant debris. But then, when spring arrives with that warmth and moisture, boom, it wakes up and releases millions of these microscopic spores into the air, just floating around, waiting for the perfect moment to land on a grape. And this right here is where the story splits into two completely different paths. On one side, you've got gray rot, the scourge. It just destroys grapes. It loves relentless, constant dampness, and it creates these awful, musty flavors. It's a total loss. But on the other side, you have noble rot, the blessing. This version concentrates the grape. It needs a super specific weather pattern, and it creates these unbelievably complex, beautiful aromas. This is the secret to what people call liquid gold. Same fungus, totally different destinies. So let's dive into the dark side first, the one that gives winemakers nightmares all around the world. This is what happens when that delicate balance we talked about tips completely in the wrong direction. For gray rot to really take hold, you need dampness that just won't quit. Think about days of persistent rain, humidity that's always sky high, and absolutely no wind to dry things out. This creates a perfect breeding ground, especially if the grapes have any tiny little wounds from, say, insects or hail. That's like an open door for the fungus to walk right in. And the results? Oh, it's an absolute disaster. The fungus doesn't just sit there, it digs in, turning the grape into this watery, mushy mess that's covered in a fuzzy gray mold. And the wine, if you could even call it that, would taste like damp soil and decay. It's no joke. Entire harvests are lost to this destructive form of the fungus all the time. But what if those conditions were different? What if you could tame the beast? This is where the magic happens, the alchemy, but it requires this perfect, almost choreographed dance of weather events. It all, and I mean all of it, comes down to a very specific daily rhythm. You need these foggy, humid mornings that give just enough moisture for the fungus to gently start growing on the skins of perfectly ripe grapes. But then, and this is the absolute key, you need sunny, breezy afternoons to dry everything out. That daily drying process is what stops the fungus from turning into that monster gray rot. So instead of destroying the grape, the fungus now becomes this tiny, microscopic helper for the winemaker. Its little filaments poke these micro-perforations, basically tiny holes in the grape skin. And through these holes, the water inside the berries slowly evaporates over weeks. But all the good stuff, the sugar, the acids, the flavors, it all gets left behind, becoming incredibly, intensely concentrated. Now, of course, you can't just expect this natural miracle to happen in any old vineyard with any old grape. No, creating these incredible wines requires this perfect storm of the right place, the right plant, and a huge amount of human effort. You see, only certain grape varieties can even handle this. They need to have thin skins so the fungus can get in easily, and, this is vital, high natural acidity. That acidity is the backbone. As all that sugar gets concentrated, you need that zippy acidity to keep the final wine feeling fresh and balanced, not just sickly sweet. Semillon, Riesling, and Ferment, they are the undisputed superstars here. And the harvest, wow, it is one of the most labor-intensive jobs in the entire world of wine. See, the grapes don't all get noble rot at the same time, so workers have to go through the same rows of vines again and again and again, sometimes for weeks, painstakingly selecting only the perfectly shriveled, moldy grapes, often picking them one by one. And to really put into perspective just how precious this stuff is, get this. Because the grapes are so dehydrated and shriveled up, the amount of juice you get is tiny.
From one entire healthy grapevine, you might only get enough juice to produce a single glass of wine. That right there is a huge reason why these wines are so rare and, yep, so expensive.
So, after all that risk, all that waiting, all that back-breaking work, what does this liquid gold actually taste like? Let's take a quick sensory tour of the world's most famous examples. The really cool thing is the fungus doesn't just concentrate the grape's existing flavors. It's a true alchemist. It actually creates entirely new ones. The aromatic profile is just this stunning symphony of things like honey, dried apricot, orange marmalade, saffron, and ginger, all balanced by that bright, vibrant acidity that keeps the whole thing fresh and exciting. It's a taste experience unlike anything else. And the reverence for these wines goes way, way back. This quote, which is famously attributed to Louis XIV of France when he tasted Hungarian Tokaji, just captures it perfectly. The wine of kings and the king of wines. Our first stop has to be Sauternes in Bordeaux, France. This is kind of the spiritual home for these wines. Here, the Semillon grape produces wines that are just famously rich, luscious, and opulent. We're talking deep notes of honey, saffron, and candied apricot with a texture like liquid silk. Okay, next up, we're traveling to Tokaj in Hungary, one of the original and most historic sweet wine regions on the planet. Based on the ferment grape, these wines are legendary for their searing acidity and wild complexity. You get these incredible flavors of orange marmalade, maybe some black tea, and exotic spices. These are wines that can literally age for a century, maybe more. And for our last stop, let's look at Germany and Austria, where the noble Riesling grape creates botrytized wines of just incredible purity and elegance. People often call them electric because that super high Riesling acidity just perfectly balances the sweetness. Just imagine candied lemon, ripe peach, and this distinct piercing mineral note that just sings. So we have to end with a really critical question. That delicate knife-edge weather cycle that's required for noble rot, that perfect dance of morning fog and afternoon sun, is unbelievably vulnerable. As our climate gets more erratic, more extreme, these perfect conditions are becoming rarer and rarer. It really leaves us to wonder, can this ancient magical winemaking tradition, a gift from a fungus with two faces, actually survive in our changing world?